Listen, part of people that may be watching this are people that may not be in India, but that have operations in India, or may have had decisions put on hold to start operations in India. What would be your advice to people sitting outside of India that have operations in India today? What would you tell CEOs of large corporations about the situation in India and how to look at it?
I would tell them that India is a very, very unique country. It's very resilient. Its people are very industrious, and they will bounce back. At the same time, they need kindness and compassion right now from employers around the world. We don't have a safety net. We don't have a security policy that assures us wages if we are out of a job. We don't have unemployment benefits, and we are all working in very difficult circumstances. Even though we work for modern brands and we work for large corporations, it's not the same. And the cultural, economic, social diaspora of India is very different from a developed country. So while we all extend ourselves as a developed country in terms of our thinking intellectually as managers, we operate in a developing country environment. So, sometimes I think my experience with large corporations is that they don't totally get it all the time.
Yes.
And a large part of my communication is about making people understand that if I cut a store manager's salary or a fashion consultant's salary by X percentage, he won't not be able to pay rent, he'll be evicted. You're going to ruin his livelihood. So one of the first things that we talk about is moral leadership. At a time like this, come what may, we have to find the money from somewhere to be kind and compassionate for people, because they are our future, they are the talent who's going to take the business to the next step. Plus, we will spend years training them. Yeah. And we spend years grooming them, Yes. And this is the time when we need to protect them as well.
And I think, Dhruv, if we can just spend some time on this, I think this notion that safety net is not there. And I think you're familiar with Canada, but in Canada, there are all kinds of government policies that are there to sort of take over, if you will, when companies are not able to pay. So there are programs for individuals, there are programs for corporates, there are programs for small businesses. There's even in Quebec, for example, they're now paying part of employee training. All of that is really not there in India.
It isn't. The government, for example, we have an industry body called the Retailers Association of India, and it has been campaigning with the government, lobbying with the government for the last 60 days to give a stimulus package for the retail industry. The retail industry employs 42 million people in India. It's the size of most countries. And there is no stimulus package, there is no help from the government. In fact, the government imposed an order ordering companies to pay full wages. And that order was revoked only 2 weeks ago. Otherwise, a CEO could face penal action for not paying employees full wages. But how do you pay full wages when the malls are not giving you rent relief and when your income source is blocked off? So it's been a very hard time in the last 2 months to somehow shore up the resources to be able to just pay salaries to people so that they can stay afloat. And that's where I say that's the grit required, that's the moral leadership required to sort of be able to take it forward. In the last, I would say, 1 month, almost 120 to 150 million jobs in the country have been lost. And many more are on the way. In June, we are going to see another 50 to 100 million jobs being gone. So this is a huge and economic crisis with the social impact, which is going to come back to sort of slow India down incredibly, unless the government does something very fast and unless companies also find ways and means, creative ways to keep people employed or engaged in some form in the economic activity. Yeah.
And thank you so much for that, Dhruv, because I think as we survey the world, we often don't realize that situations in other places can be absolutely dire. And I think you paint a realistic picture, but a worrisome picture of what the situation could be a few months from now in India. Dhruv, is there
Yes.
anything else that you'd want to add? Anything that we haven't covered in terms of leading through this situation in India?
Yeah, I think we have not, I think we should focus a bit on the customer journey
Yeah.
because consumer behavior is changing very rapidly. Shopping behavior, what are consumers looking at? There are two, three aspects here. One is consumers are now sizing up brands and companies and seeing how they are treating their people.
Yeah.
That's a very big trend. And when it does not happen, there is a lot of social media talk on it. Two, consumers are saying, can you give me a contactless shopping experience? And therefore, contactless e-commerce is really growing exponentially. And the kind of tech that is developing to support that is incredible.
Yes.
So these two things are very, very important. The third is, of course, online shopping in India will definitely become very big, and it's going to possibly move in the fashion industry at least from being 20 to 30% of a company's portfolio to being almost 35-40% in the coming months. Maybe it will taper off again once again people feel safer or a vaccine is out, but at the moment 75% of consumers say they will not prefer to shop in a mall. 75%, that's a big number, and that number could change tomorrow, but as of now that's the number. So we're looking at a scenario where India is really not looking forward to doing discretionary spending. However, it is an economy that has always bounced back, and it's important to stay put, be patient, and do all the right things for the business, remodel the business, protect the talent, as well as look after the customer journey.
And I think that trend is a trend that we're seeing globally, that this move
Absolutely, yes.
to e-commerce, and as you say, contactless shopping, if you will, is definitely something we're seeing everywhere. And as always, India may leapfrog and be in a position, and I think e-commerce is already fairly advanced in India, and all we're going to see is an acceleration of this.
And there is one other trend which is unique to India in the consumer journey, is the government's push and perhaps a larger ecosystem push to consume Indian products, to support Indian brands, and to encourage Indian ethnic wear, or perhaps Indian handloom industry, or perhaps Indian clothing, Indian brands, fashion brands, so that there is greater self-reliance. So that's the push from the government through its social media handles. Of course, it will have some impact on a lot of people, especially in the middle class, who would love to embrace Indian brands over maybe foreign fashion brands. That may happen over a period of time.
Yes, and that's also a very interesting trend, and perhaps something we see everywhere, but in countries like India, this may become more important as a trend.
Yes, and what has happened is the convergence of a trend that had already started, Vincent, which was about sustainability. And there was a lot of negative press about fashion brands leading up to COVID over the last 6 months. I was observing about how fashion brands are creating a lot of environmental destruction through the processes. And that trend had already started. Now with sustainability becoming a big issue and rural farmers and artisans gaining greater prominence, I see the shift happening toward minimalism and greater respect for sustainable products.
Yes, that's also a very interesting trend. Dhruv, listen, thank you very much for giving me your time. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Vincent.
Your vast knowledge on the situation in India. Good luck with the continuation. I hope that the situation resolves itself in a certain way, and that things slowly get back to a more sustainable path for you, for the businesses, and the people of India.
They will, Vincent. I'm sure that Indian economy and its people will rebound much more stronger.
Great. But thanks again, and hopefully
Thank you, Vincent.
we can see each other live in the not too distant future.